Hello, my friend, and welcome to the long-term Fuji XT4 review video. I made my first review video after probably a few months of using the camera, which to some people is a long-term review, but to me that's just using the camera. So now I'm making this long-term review because I've used it for almost a year now, and I feel even more confident telling you about it. But I'm going to keep it really quick, so watch my full review if you have not, if you're looking for a first review, because there will be information, there will be thoughts and opinions that I don't address here. So I'm just gonna dive right into it and start with the autofocus. I start with the autofocus because it's probably one of the most frequent questions I'm getting asked and have gotten asked over the last year, and it's good. It's good enough for me. I use it for wedding days, I use it for commercial shoots, I've used it for these YouTube videos. I use it about 80% of the time. And the 20% of the time that I'm not using it, I'm aware of why I'm not using autofocus. It's racking focus, pulling focus for special shots. It's in scenarios that are really difficult for autofocus with lots of different contrast points, or with no contrast points. So yeah, I like the autofocus. It has been more than sufficient for me. It widely depends on what lens you're using. Watch Philip Bloom's video about that. I use the Sigma 18-35 with the Fringer Pro 2 adapter almost exclusively, and that lens works fine. It's a photo lens and it's old, so it's not perfect, but it performs adequately, and I know its weaknesses. So I like the autofocus. The next big one is the IBIS, and I really like the IBIS too. It's going to replace a monopod perfectly, in my opinion. It's not going to replace a gimbal, it's not going to replace a glide cam, but it's going to replace a monopod and maybe a tripod for some things, and I like it. That does exactly what I want it to. I don't need it to be a gimbal, I don't need it to be a glide cam, and I'm not expecting it to be. But if you want it to be one of those things, then it probably isn't going to be that, and you might not like it. So yeah, again, learn the weakness, work around it, use it where I can, don't where I shouldn't, and I love the IBIS. I think it's great. The last sort of controversial one, I think, is overheating. I have yet to have a single overheating issue. I shoot in the very hot Midwest United States weather. I've shot in the desert of the United States. This thing has been with me everywhere that I've traveled, and I've yet to experience overheating. But I also don't shoot long clips of 4K 60. I would advise you not to be doing that anyway. I can't think of that many scenarios where you need to. So yeah, if you're gonna be shooting long clips of 4K 60, then maybe this isn't the camera for you, but so far it hasn't overheated on me in almost any normal use case scenario. So yeah, that's it for overheating, and I think that wraps up the controversial topics. So let's just move on to real user stuff. I've said this in many other Fuji videos that I have made, but it's really hard to explain. It's just fun to use this camera. The build quality and the ergonomics are great. They do their job really well. I've shot in dusty windstorms, I've shot in rain, I've shot in a lot of different weather scenarios, and I've yet to have trouble. And I don't think the Fringer Pro 2 adapter that I'm using is even weather sealed, if I'm right. But regardless, I have yet to have any sort of camera issues related to weather sealing. I enjoy the build quality a lot. It's actually seen some drops and it's doing just fine. The grip is deep enough for me. It doesn't bother me that much. Yeah, I'm really not picky, I guess, when it comes to that. As long as the body holds up to a few drops and a little bit of weather, and it's done that so far. But otherwise, using a Fuji camera is just fun, and you can't explain that until you get your hands on it. I don't even use the dials, but I love them so much. And the image quality would be the next topic when it comes to like real world user experience. The image quality in both video and in stills are incredible. When it comes to stills, I don't shoot a lot, but I'll put a slideshow right here so you can see some stills I've taken with it. And when it comes to video, of course, I love the image quality that you get from this. Whether you're shooting in 10-bit or 8-bit, whether you're shooting in a film simulation or in F-Log, I just love the image that comes out of these Fuji cameras so much. It's so easy to work with in color grading and post-production. Whether it's 8-bit or 10-bit, they're both really impressive. So yeah, I really love the image quality, and I think when it comes to the file sizes, that's kind of a natural transition. I'm really happy with the file size options and the file options that Fuji gives you. I've yet to be disappointed still to this day in my long-term review. I can make my files as small as 50 megabits per second in HD, or as large as all intra H.265 400 megabits per second in 4K 60. Actually, all I, you cannot do 4K 60. Sorry about that. But you can make it 400 megabits per second in a long GOP. So anyway, it gives me plenty of file size options, a lot of room to move in post, and a lot of data to work with. If you want small files, it's got it. If you want large files that are really robust for grading and editing, it's got that too. All in all, awesome file sizes, awesome image quality. It's great. Last two little specific things to touch on are the low light performance as well as the dynamic range. I'm still blown away by both. It's not a Sony a7S III. It's not, a lot of cameras that are low light beasts or whatever, but it does great up to really like 10,000 ISO. I feel pretty comfortable. The other day I was doing a real estate video and put it on auto ISO so I could do just like one walkthrough, and I think it pushed up to 12,800 in like 1 or 2 rooms that I was shooting in. And when I exported the video, like, it looked really good. And then I added a tiny bit of noise reduction in DaVinci Resolve, and all of it was gone. It looked great. The image held up really well. So I'm happy with the low light performance, and the dynamic range continually blows my mind. I don't know how Fuji is getting such good dynamic range and such perfect highlight roll off from these cameras, but they are, and I love it, and I'm gonna keep taking advantage of it. Now my little personal relationship with the camera. And these are the quirks and the things that I love and that I hate about it. I'm gonna use my notes for this one. The first one is that I love the battery shape now because I can change it in the dark. Before it was just a little square or rectangle and every side felt the same. And this is so funny, but when you use a camera for this long, you're in the dark shooting with it and you wanna be able to quickly swap your battery. And it's nice knowing exactly where the grooves are and how to load it in the dark, which is funny, but it's great. The next one is that the side flaps, the side door and the side flaps, what Fuji did here really bothers me. I get the fact that you want to have the SD card door removable because someone who wants to hot swap for recording, but you'll have a 29-minute limit on this camera anyway. So I don't know if I fully understand that decision. And the side door flappies cover up the flip screen. Yeah, that just really bothers me. I wish they would have just done 2 removable doors. That would have been brilliant. Yeah, can't understand that one, Fuji. With that, the flippy screen, I'm still neutral. I like it, it's helpful, but I'm behind the camera just as much as I am in front of it, if not more so. And being behind the camera, I don't love having to look over off to the side. I would prefer to just have a tilt. So if everybody could just copy Panasonic here and get the 3-axis, like tilt, flip, everything, that'd be great. But that's the flip screen. The battery door and the tripod plate issue. Fuji, you should have moved your tripod hole thing, the 3/4 20 or whatever. Just move it over just a little bit, like, or figure out a different design for the battery door. I don't know, but the battery door is like barely opens, or like sometimes doesn't open with different plates with the tripod mount as it is currently. That bothers me. The menu defaults to the My menu every time you open it up. And just in general, I like the menus a lot. They're definitely less scary than other camera systems in my opinion, but there are just some quirks and some user weirdness that I just don't love. Again, it's hard to explain that, but just a tiny little quirk that I have. My last thing here is actually a love. I don't know if every manufacturer has this, and I don't think they do, but the auto white balance lock and the tally lights and everything in there that was just like so well thought through. There are so many of these tiny little features that Fuji put thought into and are just incredibly helpful. The tally light control is like you can control the front, the back, the blinking, the not, and it's just really useful in a lot of use cases. And the auto white balance lock is a feature where as you are using auto white balance, you can just press a button and you can toggle lock it. And it is so useful because I don't have time on a wedding day usually to do Kelvin. And if I'm using the general categories, it's just not specific enough. And so auto white balance lock is perfect because I can lock it in each new scenario that I'm in, and I can trust that the auto white balance is gonna nail it. The last thing is the value. The value of this camera to me is pretty absurd. What you're getting for the price is pretty much unmatched in my opinion when it comes to an APS-C hybrid camera. I just think that there are not any other cameras that are offering these specs and this user experience at this price. It's pretty wild to me that Fuji is able to offer for $1,700 everything that they are. So I love it. I think it's probably the best value camera currently still on the market, particularly hybrid. If you're talking about cinema, there's other options. And if you're talking about photo specific or photo heavy, there are other options. But I think when it comes to a true hybrid camera with specs and a great user experience, I think the X-T4 personally stands alone. I think the X-T4 is perfect for my needs right now, but there are some things that would definitely be solved by a more video-centric camera, and I would be really excited to see Fuji do that. So anyway, that's my long-term review of the Fuji X-T4. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments below. This was a pretty quick and informal video. If you can't tell, I just threw my lav mic in my front pocket of my shirt. So I just wanted to throw this up here on the internet so that someone could be helped by it, because maybe they saw my review and wanted to know how it's still going with the X-T4. Great camera, love it a lot. It's produced some beautiful and meaningful films in my hands, and I'm really proud of them. So that's it for this video. I really appreciate you watching. Thank you so much. And the sponsor of this video is my LUTs. So if you haven't seen that I sell LUTs, check them out below. And that's it. Thanks. See ya.